Hi, welcome to the first OSPA webinars. We are excited to provide these to you. We are sad that we couldn't all be together in person as planned for our spring conference, but definitely the safety and health of everyone is what's most important. But as a board, it was really important for us to also provide you some opportunities that you can get the CPD credits that you're used to getting from our organization. We know that's something that we're able to provide 2 times a year, and cutting the spring conference cut that. We also know that there's a lot of need for information right now. So we put together 2 webinars that we think are going to be very informative for the current COVID-19 sessions. However, in order to have our sessions and you watching this be considered for NASP approved CPD credits, you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork because we don't have a system to track who actually watches these all the way through. And so because we don't have that, we had to get a little creative. And so what we did is we created a Google form with code where you're going to fill out code words. So I'm going to share what that Google form looks like. The link to the form is posted in the description and should have also been sent out with the video links that you received, however you got here. So if you don't have the form that I'm talking about, go find it right now, get it opened up, and I'm going to share it with you, what it looks like. Okay, filling out this form should be pretty easy. You have it open here. You're going to, very first thing, fill out your email address, scroll down, click next. Then I would recommend having this open in a window beside the video that you're watching. And as you're watching this video, you're going to see some words come up at the bottom. And every time you see a word pop up, you are just going to submit your answer. So let's say the first word was jump. It's not. We're just saying jump. There's 5 words total throughout the duration of this video. Once you get all 5 in, you're going to click next, and then we need your full name and your district or employer. And once we have that information, we will be able to, well, take that back. Once we have that information and we need the evaluation completed, and once we have those 2 components, we'll be able to email you your NASP CPD certificate. Thank you for participating, and we hope you enjoy our first webinars.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Erica Olinger. I am the Oklahoma NASP delegate as well as a board member for the Oklahoma School Psychological Association. This module is NASP Resources and Support Overview during COVID-19. The module was developed as a resource in response to the global pandemic COVID-19, otherwise known as the coronavirus, and its impact on school psychologists and all other school professionals. Before we get started, I just wanted to say that today, just like every day, I am so very thankful to be a part and serve the school psychologists in the state of Oklahoma. It is truly a privilege to be part of such a resilient, professional, and caring community. And I find personal and professional solace in knowing that we're problem solving together as we forge ahead in this unprecedented time. I am honored to serve as your delegate, and I hope to provide any needed support or resources that would benefit educators as we engage in the challenging work ahead. So please feel free to reach out. For this module, my hope is to orient learners towards the resources, guidance, and information that has been developed by the National Association of School Psychologists. Specifically, we'll be looking at resources developed for COVID-19 specifically, virtual school delivery for school psychologists, crisis response and intervention resources, including self-care and caring for the caregiver, and additional resources that have been developed. I've received some questions about interns who are worried about completing their internship hours, or others who are worried about their continuing education credits. and fulfilling the obligations for their NCSP certification, so I will address those as well. Really, I won't be going in depth over any one particular topic, though I may hit some bullet points. The intent of this particular module is really more about orienting learners to where to access these resources so that school psychologists and others in education are familiar with the types of resources NASP will be providing and exactly how to find them. So we will be spending some time directly on the website. And throughout, I will be talking about how NASP leadership structures work and about the action plans that they have in place to help provide resource and guidance in response to COVID-19, as well as people you can contact if you have additional questions or need support or other information. So just to get started, for those of you that aren't familiar with the NASP leadership structure, I wanted to give a super brief overview to let you know that many of the materials that are created and provided and published do come from NASP leadership. So that would include the Leadership Assembly. You can think of the Leadership Assembly as the voting body of NASP. So that is made up of the Board of Directors, the state delegates, as well as committee chairs and co-chairs. In terms of committees, there are many, and most of them are focused around particular topics. So for example, there is a Prepare Crisis Intervention and Response Committee, whose responsibility it is to research, publish, and provide guidance on those topics. But there are many other committees who are working alongside and in concert with those committees specifically designed to address crisis, and we'll look at some of those. In addition to the Leadership Assembly or the voting body, though, I did want you to know that there are other portions of NASP who are working diligently and around the clock on the COVID-19 and other issues. Some of those include presidential task forces. Task forces are typically very focused in their work. They're often time limited, but they include members from many facets of educational professionals. So there are certainly school psychology practitioners, there are trainers, there are graduate students, there are researchers, and there are stakeholders. So you don't necessarily have to be a part of the Leadership Assembly to be on one of the task forces. And in fact, they often include focus groups and work groups as well. The NASP interest communities, which I will show you, is another mechanism where a lot of work is being completed and resource development is coming from. And the communities really are a way for practitioners, those in NASP leadership, and allied professionals and stakeholders to be in continuous communication about issues that are affecting our practice. I will show you some examples, but I just want you to know that a lot of the work that the Leadership Assembly deems important comes from communication directly from the interest communities. And finally, I just wanted to mention that there is paid NASP staff who work alongside all of the other members that I've spoken of to make the operations of NASP run smoothly. The cool thing about the staff is that they are not all necessarily school psychologists. So we have expertise from many other areas, including things like policy development and communications and media and those types of things. So just know that NASP does have a staff who works alongside and currently around the clock those in leadership to develop the guidance and resources that I'm showing you today. And the last group of leaders that I really wanted to mention really is all of the school psychologists that we have in our great nation at this time. And so what I want you to know is that you may not be on a committee, you may not be a delegate, but all of the work that the NASP as an organization is working towards comes from the input, the questions, and the needs of our school psychologists on the ground. You are the leaders of our organization as well, and we all work together. Often people will ask me, what is NASP doing, for example, in response to COVID-19? But NASP does not just mean the leadership and those in elected or appointed position. NASP is all of us who claim to be a part of and who are proud to be a part of this profession of school psychology. And what I want you to know throughout is that your voice and your input and your concerns are the building blocks for all of the things that I'm presenting and that the NASP leadership takes on as it helps to support our kids, our communities, and our schools. Okay, so let's get into it now. So NASP has been really busy in providing and creating resources in response to COVID-19. So I'm going to take us to the website in a moment, and I'm going to show you specifically from the homepage where you can find COVID-19 supports and the Resource Center. I will show you throughout how you can search by topic, and then we'll conclude the end of this section when I will show you how you can turn on email notifications and you can access other members only areas of the site. So allow me to pull up my screen here for you. Here we are. So this is the NASP home page on the website. If you don't know, the web address is nasponline.org. That's where you will find it, and this is the home page. Before we really get going here, what I want you to notice is that I am not logged in as a member. So what you see for almost the entirety of this presentation are things that are publicly available. So any school psychologist can access them, any educator, any parent or caregiver, anybody that can get on the internet can access these resources. And in fact, as you'll see, they have opened up what was previously members only content to being public content during this time so that everyone can access the needed supports. I just want you to know NASP's website is notorious for being very hard to navigate typically. However, I am very proud of the work that they have done in response to COVID-19 because they have done tremendous work in gathering, organizing, and crosswalking the information related to this topic. And I'll show you what I mean as we walk through some of these items, but I want you to know that in this area, the information is not hard to find and that it is organized in a way I think that is very user-friendly and will provide robust access and quick access. Okay, so getting started, this is the NASP homepage, as I mentioned. The area that you're really going to be interested in right now, they put right on the homepage. So if you come below, you know, sort of these first broad tabs in the scroll bar, you'll see the section called Featured Resources. And right here is the COVID-19 Resource Center. This particular access point they just created within the last couple of days. The resources they've been developing for at least a month or 6 weeks, but it's all now combined and easy to access in one place. When you click, you'll see that they have, it's pretty up top, and they have a handy hand washing poster from the CDC that you could download if you wanted, but really where the bang for your buck is going to be here in this middle section. And you'll see that they have divided their resources into easily accessible topics that are timely for school psychologists, but also other professionals. So there's a section for special education, crisis and mental health, families and educators, and then professional and credential preparation. So as you can see, just looking at it, they've got 12.5 resources already developed and ready related to these particular topics. I'm going to walk through and highlight just a few of them for you, just so you can sort of see the caliber of resource and sort of the format and what to look for, as well as I'll point out various features of the website along the way. So I'm going to skip special education. I will come back to it, but for now I want to start under the crisis and mental health heading. And what you'll see is, the very first resource here is in relation to the PREPARE model, which is the NASP developed curriculum for crisis prevention, intervention, and response. Many of you know that I am a PREPARE trainer and that it is a long time research and practical interest of mine, particularly in my current job at the State Department of Education. I will not go on in detail about this except to say that the same folks that developed the model and the curriculum have been working around the clock to particularly include information and resources related specifically to the global pandemic. And so those are being folded in as we speak to the curriculum. If you would like more information about Prepare, there's an entire section on the NASP website about it. And of course, you could contact me or the Student Support Office at OSDE, and we can give you a lot of information. I feel like this will be particularly important as we reintegrate into schools. Utilizing the entire model will be, but there are components right now that are appropriate and that have already been developed that we will go through. Next to or following the Prepare model and all of the good stuff that's encompassed in that is this, which is talking to children about COVID-19 or coronavirus, a parent resource. I want to visit this one because it is the one I've handed out the most in the last 4 weeks or so, and it is a tremendous resource if you haven't seen it. When you click on it, when you click on many things on the NASP site, what you'll see is this particular format. So this will become familiar to you. Under the topic heading here, which is what we clicked on, you'll see in the middle of the web page here, they have text and sort of a web version of the resource or of the document. And so you can certainly scroll through that and read it, and it's very beneficial in a web format. But what I find even more helpful is typically if you look to the right, they're going to have this exact same information. It is replicated into a PDF form. So if we click on the very top one here, you're going to get a PDF download, which I will open for us. And this will familiarize you with what a typical NASP PDF resource will look like. So you can see they're typically not too long. This one is about 4 pages, and they've added a bit to it since its original version. So it has been updated as of March 25th. Some of the features that I want you to notice is that, first of all, it is updated, and so they are timely. They don't let them, become irrelevant, or if new information comes up, they do update them. They're often created in conjunction with relevant stakeholders. This particular document was created along with the National Association of School Nurses, which would be an appropriate professional group to collaborate with. It is intended to be user-friendly, and so what you can see is that it talks about this document is going to help children cope with changes that are going to result from COVID-19 and the implications therein, and it gives very specific guidance. So you can see it's in a bullet format. Important words are bolded, and so this would be appropriate to give to parents. I've actually given it to a lot of teachers and caregivers and administrators as well, because anybody that's going to be talking to kiddos could benefit from this document. And it tries to talk about, your own responses. Let's set the stage for the discussion, as well as related considerations to your discussion is let's monitor the TV, let's monitor the social media, and those types of things. And it gives very explicit instructions about how parents and teachers and mental health professionals and school counselors can talk to kids. Also, you'll see throughout this document and others, they're going to reference important reference points. So here, for example, they've got a link provided for the CDC so that you can keep up to date. What I particularly appreciate about this document uniquely is that it also points out you're going to talk to students who are elementary aged differently than you are students who are in upper elementary or middle school. And that's going to look different than students who are in high school. And so I really appreciate that it gives a developmental perspective and developmental advice in terms of reactions we might see from students, and also how we as adults should react and speak to them. So other information here, again, I would love to go over all of it with you, but I would suggest that this is one that you read, that you distribute, that you become familiar with, and also just know, again, that NASP is going to credit and to reference other important documents. So you can see from their resources list here, they've got additional things from SAMHSA, from the CDC, etc. So the cool thing about this is now it's in a PDF form. You can download it and print it off and hand it out. You can and mail it, if you wanted to mail it to parents. You can email it. It is yours to use, and there's no restricted access in its use. And again, I have found it helpful in emailing it to friends, neighbors, school professionals, mental health professionals, and I'll be very transparent. It has helped me in talking to my own children in this time. So that's one of the documents that I have found particularly helpful from the COVID Resource Center. I apologize that my internet is going slow. In addition, you'll see, for example, this is a PDF about school crisis teams. So if you're on that school crisis team, this particular document comes out of the Prepare model and will be helpful for you. They've got several similar ones about guidelines for school administrators. So that might be something that you could help support your school administrators with. So lots of resources here that are helpful. What I'd like to point out is that in addition to the ones that they have specifically highlighted here on the COVID-19 Resource Center, these are just the highlighted ones. And I would ask you to also, as needed, click on this View More Resources option underneath each major topic heading. And what you're going to find there is a gold mine of additional related topics. So this is COVID-19 crisis and mental health resources. I'd like to point out a couple of these that I have used in addition to the parent resource. And so one of them has been this addressing grief document. I have found extremely helpful because our children, as well as many of our school staff and adults and our own personal selves, are working through this issue of grief, and that is one of the things many of us are working through, and many of our children are working through. Again, it gives developmentally appropriate reactions, what you might see in your preschool kiddo, in your elementary kiddo, so that you kind of know what a grief response may look like. It talks about there may not be a timeline. You might see a regression in development and in milestones. So just really talks through, the things to do, the things to avoid. So again, meant to be very, very user-friendly, very specific, and something that you could put in the hands of school personnel and caregivers as we move forward. And again, it is in that PDF format as well as the web format. The other thing that I forgot to mention on the previous page was that, so to the right here, we have typically the PDF format, and then over to the left, what we have is related documents. And so they're very good about linking, okay, you wanted to know about addressing grief, here's some other things that may help. Recommended books for children coping with loss and trauma, addressing griefs, tips for teachers and administrators. So they do a good job not only of providing exactly what you clicked on in terms of a web page and of a PDF, but also in they provide related documents and resources. One other thing I forgot to mention as we click back is on the parent resource that I spoke of, that talking to kids about COVID-19. When you do click on that and you look to the right for those PDF documents, did I click on it? And when you click on it and you look to the right for the PDFs, what I also love about this one is that it has been translated into several different languages. So if you are working with kids and with families who do not speak English. This exact document has already been translated into several languages, and again, available in the PDF version, so you could email it, you could print it and send it. Very helpful. Many of the other documents that I will reference have been translated by NASP already as well. So let's go back to some of those additional resources here. The other ones under the crisis and mental health that I have found personally helpful. I sent out today several of these anxiety handouts, so that's helpful for parents and teachers in terms of working through anxiety. And notice it's a helping handout for school and home. So it would give guidance to those school professionals as well as our parents who are now having to work through issues more closely related to their students that school professionals may not be able to see. You see one on suicidal thinking and threats. We may see an increase in that kind of behavior the longer that we're engaged in social distancing. Here's one for depression. Here's one there's one for anxiety, depression, and grief. The other handout that I would love to pull up for you right now is this Care for the Caregiver tips and families, and it's just really talking about if you're the teacher, if you're the school psychologist, if you are the parent, if you are the administrator, we are all giving care to children. And so it really talks about how do we look out for our own emotions, our own warning signs, and how do we manage those in a way that's healthy so that we can then respond to our kids in a healthy manner. So this is one, give out to your fellow school psych teams, give out to your school counselors, give out to families so that they have some resource about managing their own responses during the COVID-19 response. So those are just a handful that I wanted you to look at in the mental health resources. The Prepare portion of the site has many other extremely valuable resources that you may want to take a peek at, but if you don't have time, again, this heading, this particular format under the Crisis Resource Center has them organized for you. So let's go back to that. Speaking of the COVID-19 Resource Center, so remember now that we've got our 4 main headings, each of which has some very salient and helpful information underneath. We looked at this one. The next one I would point your attention to is a section that is specific for families and educators, and so very specific to those groups and handouts that you could give. I mentioned that NASP had done a very good job on their site about crosswalking, and what I meant by that is, you notice under families and educators, they have the handout for talking to kids about COVID-19, a parent resource, but we just saw that also under crisis and mental health. So it's designed that in this time when we're looking for resources and none of us really have the time to find something buried in the site, you can see they did a good job of crosswalking it. It's in several places typically, and you can find it with ease wherever it is relevant. Let's hop over now to the special education section, and let me point out some of the important features of that. And we're going to come back to this virtual service delivery because I know particularly in Oklahoma, that is a very hot topic as we as school psychologists are trying to discover and navigate our way through our directive for engaging in distance learning for at least the rest of this school year. So we'll come back to this one. But notice that in addition to their own internally generated NASP resources, the website has also attempted to gather and to display other pertinent and relevant information. So you'll notice right here that something that has been provided by ed.gov. You'll see here the United States Department of Education guidance. So of course they're providing guidance, and they've already created an FAQ for school psychologists. So that's here. And then in addition to that, they even did a supplementary fact sheet after creating their very first document. So all of those things that you may find relevant are here. So I kind of think of it as my one-stop shop. I don't have to remember where it was on the CDC that I found, my guidance for childcare programs, and I don't have to remember where the US DOE fact sheet was. So they try to put, relevant information here as well so that you can come and find it. So let's just take a moment to peek at the virtual service delivery in response to COVID-19 disruptions. So again, this is guidance developed by NASP specifically, and it is specifically related to school psychologists. So I'm going to come and download the PDF because I like to view that as opposed to the web page, but of course you could do either. I'm going to take a quick drink while it opens. And here we go. So the nice thing about this one is that it really does speak specifically to school psychologists, and it gives very thoughtful guidance. And a lot of this document was created in response to concerns that school psychologists posed to leadership and that they were asking and emailing about. And so one of the things it talks about is just considering your own competence and considering what is really in the best interest of students. And so, I've already heard that certain administrators are wanting school psychologists to finish up their evaluations, and they're asking, I don't know why you can't just give that whisk virtually or over a Zoom meeting. And so this gives, some guidance to that. And it's saying, we do have rules and we have standardization and we have procedures. And by the way, not only has that test not been approved for that type of administration, but I've never been trained in it, or I don't know how to deliver it in that manner. And so some of the things are just considerations for you, but also talking points to administrators or parents or others who may not understand the unique intricacies of school psychology practice and why we have to be so very careful as we're moving forward to appropriately think through our evaluations and other services. I really also like that it talks about the best interests of students, because you know what? There are some assessments that you can give virtually. There are some that it's preferred that you give them virtually. But we really need to think about, is the middle of a pandemic really the best time to be doing an evaluation for a child, particularly when we're not sure what their IEP services might look like? Is it really appropriate for us as practitioners, who may not be giving the most valid performance of our lives, to be giving those? So I am not weighing in either way about those decisions, except to say that NASP has developed some guidance. They've developed some talking points regarding school psychological competence and considerations for best interests of students. And I would encourage you to read this as you're developing your virtual and distance learning plans. The other things it asks us to think about is, are we also ensuring that students have equitable access to mental health and other school psych services? So, hey, instead of getting on the Zoom and trying to administer a test that isn't Zoom appropriate, wouldn't it be nice if we could walk them through a social story, or we could teach parents how to access CASEL or PBIS.org or some of those other things, or point them in the direction of other telehealth services that may help, because students and parents and staff may need more support in the areas of mental and behavioral health as we're moving forward. And of course talks about ethics and law and how to navigate those two things, asks you to consider monitoring the guidance that comes out. One of the things I wanted to point out specifically on this document, because I did have a very specific question, is someone called me last week and said, hey, Erica, this isn't right. We shouldn't be asked to be doing evaluations. It's not appropriate. Evaluation should be face-to-face. Evaluation should be when the student and the examiner are in the appropriate place to give them. Why is NASP not standing up and just saying no, and saying that this isn't right for our profession and we're not going to do it? And so my answer was, that NASP is working on it, but at the end of the day, in case you didn't know, NASP can't provide legal guidance related to IDEA or ESSA on things like timelines or even implementation of IEPs during our school closures. I will show you how they have addressed it, but they cannot just stand up and say, nope, we refuse to engage in honoring timelines. That is one thing that if you didn't know, NASP can't speak to that. They don't have the authority. The Oklahoma State Department of Education doesn't have the authority to postpone timelines, nor does the U.S. Department of Education. Because of how that particular law is written within the IDEA, it is an actual act of Congress that would stop timelines. What I want you to keep this in mind, though, as I point out something later as a point of discussion so that I can address that concern. The other piece I really love about this particular document is that it just reminds us that we're all trying to figure out best practice. None of us know the exact answers at this point. So moving forward, the best thing that you can do is engage in a problem-solving process. I actually copied these. I blew them up and printed them out, and I'm keeping them with me just to remind me, you know what, in these unprecedented times, the best we can do is problem solve. And these are the steps to do. So similar to how I would give a teacher a protocol or train them on it or ask them to follow a set of procedures for an intervention, for me, this just helps me to make sure that I am not having intervention drift and that I'm following through with actual problem-solving steps as we're coming upon these new and never seen before issues that we're trying to talk through. So I think this would be a good thing to remember as you're talking through with your teams, with your administrators, with your teachers, so that if someone hasn't provided an answer, or if we feel like we're getting multiple pieces of information that could all be correct, you can walk through this process as kind of a check to make sure that you're looking at all of these different issues completely. That's the quickest overview I think I could give with this handout, except to say that there's going to be a lot of creative things coming out of this virtual service delivery and distance learning. I would read this document in its entirety, and then I also do believe that OSPA is going to be developing further modules that speak specifically to service delivery in different areas. So in terms of evaluations, in terms of how to provide support for academics and potentially academic interventions, and also behavioral health and mental health. So there's more to come, but for right now, this is a good guidance document for you to read and for you to share, particularly with administrators or teams who may not understand what is unique about us providing services virtually. So much more to say on that, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. The next thing that I want to show you, I am very excited about, and it is also in relation to the virtual service delivery piece. So if you scroll down below our 4 main topic areas, you'll see that there a section NASP Ask the Experts webinar series. And I'm so very pleased with this piece and excited to show you because it's very timely. And this just goes to show you how NASP leadership and how the members are really rallying and being so responsive to this crisis as best as they can. So when you scroll down, what you'll see, they had 3 earlier. Yep, they still have 3. So they have already developed webinars, and they are, as you can see here, they are designed to address the critical questions that are emerging as we face virtual telehealth. They're to provide guidance and to offer very real suggested strategies and resources for other professional practice issues that we're facing as a part of the COVID-19 response. So 2 days ago, they only had this first one, which is awesome. When a door closes and another opens, school psychologists providing telehealth services. And since then, they've added 2 more that are appropriate. Wading through a sea of ambiguity, charting a course for special education services during a pandemic. So again, webinars that you can watch as a professional, that as a school psych staff or as a school staff, you could sit down and watch together, and there's really good information that can be had here that's already been compiled. So we'll just take a peek at this first one. Also, again, I'm not even logged in as a member, so all of these things are free to anybody that can access them. So no restrictions on who can view these. So you will see after the video who the panelists are, who they got to speak to those topics, who the moderator is. For this particular webinar, there's a PowerPoint that goes with it and a PDF. And then again, you can see some related resources that are already there to help you as you're problem solving. This is a section that NASP already has plans to expand based on the concerns and questions of school psychologists in the field. So I would keep an eye on this. As I said, they've just added these last two in the last couple of days. I believe this legal and ethical considerations for remote psych services was developed a couple of years ago. So they just added it in because they knew it would be helpful. But for all of my psychs working in rural districts, this one is certainly appropriate and might be a good watch and learn and interaction for you. Okay, so we've talked about the webinars. I want to point out quickly the other piece under the special ed part that I just want you to see that is important, and just an example of what the kinds of things the NASP leadership is engaging in. Just so that you know how responsive they are trying to be. This is an example of a letter that they wrote to Congress. And so when I had the conversation with my colleague this week about, well, why isn't NASP doing anything about this? I just wanted to show that they are responding to you as practitioners, as members, as folks concerned about children and education. They do listen, and these are the types of things that you should know are happening behind the scenes, even if they're not always made public. So this letter was written earlier this week. It was to the congressional leaders. It went to all of the congressional leaders from the executive director of NASP. And it really just talks about, look, we are school psychologists. Here's what we do. This is what we are about. And here's some recommendations that we want Congress to think about as they're wading through their decisions regarding stimulus packages, education reform, all of those things. And so this isn't the only one that they've written likely, but it just talks about what we can contribute and some of the things we support. So I wanted to point out, for example, for the previous concern, one of the things that they mentioned in here is they said, look, we are fans of ESSA. We are fans of the IDEA and of supporting students with disabilities. And we're not saying that we should just forget all of it. However, we support a pause of special education evaluation timelines until schools are back in session. So NASP wouldn't support, and most practitioners would not support throwing out ESSA or the IDEA, but nor do they think we should just carry forward without pausing those timelines. And this is a decision that only Congress can make. But as you can see, though NASP can't speak to it, they can urge our leaders to make good decisions and our legislators to make decisions that we would support. So you don't have to read that in this busy time necessarily, except to know that NASP is responding in multiple ways, and not just in resource provision, but also in legislative advocacy, and that their platform comes from the feedback from the ground. Okay, so let's go back to our hub here for our COVID-19 resources. I want you to peruse those first three sections at your leisure. And the last one that you will see is the professional credential and preparation. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint to speak to those. But for those who are graduate interns, there's an entire document here that I would encourage you to read. And then for those who are in CSP, particularly this document is for those who are seeking their application from non-NASP accredited programs. Just some other things about the NASP website, just so you know, is if you ever just need to go back home, You click up here at NASP. This banner appears on all of the pages, and that takes you back to where you will want to be. And I'll show you a few more things in the time that we have remaining. But first, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. Just know again that resources are added daily to that section, and I anticipate they may expand these sections into other ones, but I hope you found that helpful, just knowing how and where and becoming familiar with the structure of how NASP does its resource provision. Okay, really quickly, for my friends on internship, what I want you to know is that you are still required to complete your 1,200 hours. I didn't put that bullet on here, and I should have. You are still required to complete 1,200, but the difference is that it used to be 600. Now only 4 of them had to be in-school experiences. So my hope is that since here in Oklahoma, we're more than halfway through the year before the cancellation, that you were able to complete at least 400 hours of in-school experience. What NASP has allowed is that now instead the remaining 800 can be made up in very flexible ways. And in the document that I asked you to read in our COVID-19 Resource Center, it gives very specific suggestions for you. It gives very specific suggestions for your internship supervisors and for your faculty members. You should also know that program training directors were sent that document directly. So it's not like they just needed to stumble upon it at NASP. NASP was proactive in sending that to them and in providing additional guidance about ways that you can complete your hours. So I just want you to know that NASP realizes you didn't get to finish out your internship experience the way you wanted to, but there are other ways, and you can certainly in Oklahoma participate in our distance learning and in our virtual learning and be on the forefront of what that's going to look like. So on the bright side, it's cutting edge and a very unique opportunity to be involved in that work. For those who are seeking NCSP, some updates for you. So if you're in that application process, one of the things that NASP has accommodated is that they will now look at your materials even if you haven't taken the praxis exam. So if you finish up your internship or you otherwise get your application packet together, but you're unable to take the praxis at this time because those tests have been canceled indefinitely, that's okay. Send in the rest of your packet and they will look at it and just know that you're going to get that praxis to them as soon as you can. You do still have to take it. You do still have to pass it. However, you do not have to have taken or passed it in order to send in the rest of your materials. Also know that if there's other documents, such as your transcripts, that you don't quite have ready yet, or that you can't access an official transcript because, let's say, the bursar is open, or the office that handles printing of official transcripts is closed for a time, then they will accept your unofficial transcript for now. Same as the praxis, you still have to get it to them at some point, but right now they're going to start reviewing your packet with unofficial documentation, which is something they didn't do previously. Specifically for those of you applying from non-NASP accredited programs, the deadline to apply, they only have 2 deadlines a year, and the first one they have extended to July 1st. So if you're not going to make the May deadline, that's okay. You now have until July to get your materials together. However, they are still going to try to complete those reviews in August because they recognize that NCSP may be needed for your contracts that typically start in August. So you try to get it to them, but by July 1, give them some grace because this may change as things unfold. But right now, they're still going to try to have those reviewed by August. If you have additional questions about NCSP, be sure to contact me or someone in the NASP office, and I'll show you where. For those of you who are my current NCSPs, just know that they are also making provisions for you as well. So many of you may have your NCSP expiring in the next couple of months. So what you should know is that you've been given a grace period. So if your NCSP expires in March, April, May, or June, add 3 months to that. So in March, you've got 3 additional months. In June, you've got 3 additional months. And that's just to allow you to complete the CEUs that you'll need, to complete the documentation that you will need, because NASP recognized that many of the CEU opportunities that you would typically be acquiring in the fall got canceled, got postponed, are no longer available. So just know that they have extended that 3-month grace period. You won't incur any fees. There will be no penalties. It's just truly 3 additional months to get it done. Also in that effort, because, for example, OSPA didn't have its traditional fall conference, most conferences and conventions were canceled for the next few months, that NASP is also offering a 50% discount at their online learning center. And I will show you that in just a moment. And also know for my APA folks, many of the sessions on the online learning center also have APA approval, just as an FYI. So if you're needing APA, just know that you can get them on the NASP site at a 50% discount. The code is NASP50 for now, and this applies through April 30th. I believe they may extend that deadline if they see a need for that, and I will show you the online learning center, but that's quite a deal. That's to ensure that you can get all of your CEUs and be prepared to apply for your NCSP. It's also, in addition for that, for any practitioner that just feels like they're going to need some additional resources. They didn't want to limit folks in this time of financial need to being able to access necessary learning tools. The next thing I'm excited about is that NASP has a series of podcasts. They're in the process of working with Apple to convert those to iTunes. And so until now, it's just been on a NASP platform, but they recognize that iTunes is more accessible for a lot of people, certainly more accessible for families and other things. And so they're in the process of getting the content approved and put on iTunes as opposed to the NASP website. Also, they've lifted member restrictions. So podcasts that used to be just limited to members now can be accessed by anyone. So let's take a quick look at that. And the way I'm going to do that is by showing you another feature of NASP. If you have no idea which tab something's going to be on, or hey, I forgot where the resource center is, there is a search bar at the very top of the NASP homepage. And so you could just type in something like podcasts. You should probably try to spell it right. And as it hits search, it's going to bring up many available searches. But fairly quickly, you should be able to find the information that you're looking for. It's not the site that's slow, by the way, it's my internet connection, which is unfortunate when you're doing an internet-based training. Okay, so here would be the podcast directory. I clicked on resources and podcasts. It looked like there was a particular podcast about talking to kids about COVID. So here are the podcasts. So if you click on that section, what you're going to see is an entire library of different podcasts that you could listen to. And again, in the process of converting to iTunes. So you can certainly filter by category. You know, you may want to do that, about how-tos and tools, all different kinds of things. Each one is going to tell you the title, how long it is, who is providing it, etc. And so this would be a great place to get some professional development. The other one I mentioned was the Online Learning Center, which you can click back. It just happens to be on the same page as the podcasts, but if it wasn't, you could just put Online Learning Center in the search bar. So here that is, and this is, again, the ones that typically have a cost are now on a 50% discount to allow school psychologists or other stakeholders to access them. So many of those as well. You might be particularly interested in the school safety and crisis ones. at this time, though there are many other ones, mental and behavioral health, and any of these issues. Now, what you'll notice is I'm still not logged in as a member, and so these are available to everybody. Often these are locked down, and they may only have 3 for special populations unless you're a member, but right now they did want everyone to have access during this time of extreme need. So that is going to cover for us our the Online Learning Center and the podcast. So if you're an NCSP or otherwise just looking for continuing ed development, NASP is trying to be responsive to your needs. Some other resources that I'd like to talk about, and these are member resources. Currently, NASP has not reduced membership prices, but there may be discussion about doing so. But there's only a very limited amount of things that someone who isn't a member can't access at this point. So one of the things I just wanted to highlight that I enjoy as a member is these, what they call NASP in brief emails. You can still find the content in these emails without being a member, but it is sure handy. And I'm going to show you an example. Actually, let me just do that right now. So I'm going to pull up my email for you. So the example of the NASP in brief that I got today is here in my mailbox. It looks like this, and it is exactly what it says. It brings you the latest news and resources from NASP. And the reason I say the latest is because I was putting this professional development together earlier today, and this particular resource wasn't on the site. So this is brand new. COVID-19, helping children cope. So even since this morning, they added something that I didn't necessarily see on the site, but they put it in the NASP in brief. Now, I promise they will get it up on the site. But it's something that was previously not accessed. So here it is. Now they do have it on the website. They did not an hour ago, and now they do, and they have it up as a PDF in our typical format. So perfect example of how responsive NASP is trying to be. Sorry, one moment. If we go back to my email and the NASP in brief, the other thing that you can see it has is the resource center. So if you were a member, you're like, thanks, Erica. I already knew everything you've tried to tell me. But nonetheless, you would get updates that may occur in the resource center as a cue to go back and check it out. It talks about the advocacy and the results of the education stimulus fund. So it not just talks about NASP things, but about related issues. Here is where they advertised the webinar series. So if you hadn't heard it from me, it would have shown up in your NASP in brief, as well as things like the grace period. So basically, I'm really not that smart. I just get all the information from my NASP in brief. Here's something on self-care. So that's what a typical NASP in brief would look like, and I got mine today. They don't send them out every day. And I think the frequency is typically about once a week, but it will increase if they feel like members need something more frequently or more timely than once a week. The next thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the I'll do this too. The NASP member exchange and communities. So those are really amazing resources that I will show you. And if you're going, hey, Erica, I am a member and I don't get NASP in brief, then what you may need to do is to change your preferences. So you'll go up here. You'll want to log in. And let me do that off screen just to protect my information here. Please pretend like I'm playing beautiful elevator music as I do this. Give me another second. Okay, so now I am logged in as a member, just so you know, this is a member resource. But if you are worried about, hey, Erica, I am a member and I'm not getting the NASP in brief, I will show you that you'll just come over here to my account. up at the very top. You'll scroll down, and under subscription preferences, you'll click here, and you can manage which emails and how often you receive them. So if you haven't seen a NASP brief and you know you're a member, or some of the other things and you know you're a member, it might be because you just need to change your preferences. The last piece from this website I want to talk about for now is the communities. So up here on the top tabs, if you'll click on membership and community, and then come down here, oops, we can probably do it this way too, and come over to, you can either do it from the drop down here, or otherwise just click on communities. This is the part I was talking about that is very impactful for the NASP leadership group, because this is a place to interact and ask questions and raise concerns, and they do look at it as a place for information for where they should be putting their efforts. And what I'll tell you is I am a fan of the Facebook group Said No School Psychologist Ever, as much as anybody. So I don't mean to disregard that it is a resource. However, I do worry sometimes that the information there is either not based in fact, not based in data, and otherwise, more what it's meant to be, a social media platform for interaction, whereas communities are meant to be more truly professional communities. So the member exchange is just kind of like a main NASP line. So you can get on and ask any question about any topic, and a lot of times you'll see that people will share resources and information. So for example, recently some things from the Prepare model were shared. The nice thing about the communities is that they are also things that show up as listservs in your emails. So the member exchange has a variety of topics. I will show you mine from today in a moment, but it's a place where you can post, you can follow the discussions that you like. You don't have to follow the ones you don't like. You can, in your preferences, say, hey, every time someone responds to this question, I want to get an email with the discussion thread, or I just want a summary at the end of the day, or I just want a summary at the end of the week. So it's responsive to your needs in terms of which information you want to follow and how often you want to follow it. So I'll show you an example of a member exchange. The other thing I want to show you though is that that's the general one, but then they have communities, and these communities again are interest and topic specific. And so the threads are, and the resources that are shared are all related to particular topics. So you can see this is all of them, very niche, very focused groups that you can become a part of. And again, most of the time you can modulate how often you want to see the information and which specific discussion items you want to follow. There are a few that may be close to you. For example, the board of directors. If you're not on the board of directors, you're not going to have access to every group, but most of the topical ones are open. And one of the ones that I have found very helpful, that I, of course, have been getting tons of information from in the last few days, and that I have found incredibly helpful. I will show you an example of what my email today looked like for this one too, as it comes up. But one of the communities is the Crisis Management and Grief Support in Schools interest group. So you could see how following that thread right now would be just another point of resource and access where you're having discussion with other practitioners, people in other states or in other parts of the country would be sharing resources and questions and answers. You can see there's been a ton of discussions already. The libraries tells you, resources that have been added and how many members there are. So let's take a look at what those look like. This is my the general member exchange that I was talking about. So if you don't want to be a part of specific communities, but you just kind of want to know what's going on, you can see that today someone asked about, hey, I decided I want to get my PhD. Someone just wanted to send a message to all educators. Oh, here's one on telehealth and school closing. So somebody said, hey, I'm an intern. And if you clicked on it, it would tell you a very specific question that they're going to be doing e-learning till April 13th. They want to provide something for parent support. So you could say, hey, I want to follow this thread. I have a suggestion. I want to reply. I want to forward this to somebody else, so you can see the utility and that it's a community that is speaking on the topic. This is my crisis management and grief support. This is, one I specifically opted into. Looks like some topics were graduate students in school closings. Oh, look, here's guidance document that my district is giving out to parents, so I can view that attachment and see what Cynthia's district is doing and see if it's something that I might like to adopt. So just an example of the power of those communities. So I would ask you to join those in response to the COVID-19, but any other places where you feel like you might need some direction. Okay, we're getting close to the end. I know I'm running close to, if not over, my time, so I apologize for that. The last couple of things I would like to say is that NASP is going to continue to support and work on efforts related to COVID-19. You will probably see their updates again in the Resource Center, but I already know that they're working on continued legislation advocacy, particularly at the federal level, but they are also providing support to states who may need that. They're already conducting research, and there's, as you can imagine, a lot of research going into play right now to support our efforts as school psychologists. They continue to collaborate with allied professionals and stakeholders, so they're continuing the conversations with, that we need to be having with other groups that are allied professionals, other professional organizations, legislators, education groups, all of those folks. Just as an example, this is one committee. It's the School Safety and Crisis Committee. Remember, there are many committees who are working on this, so this is just one example, but these are the things that I absolutely know for a fact are currently in the works. So they're working on death in the school community related to COVID-19, guidance documents for that, guidance documents for suicide prevention and response in relation to COVID-19, care for the caregiver. They're updating that one resource that I showed you to be more specific, resilience, and they're already working on research and guidance in terms of returning to school, even though we don't know for sure when that will be. So just wanted to give you an example of the other types of resources that I want you to be looking for and be mindful of, and just have solace in knowing that other professionals are working on it. And by the way, if you have input into any of these things, or you feel like NASP is missing something, or you feel like you'd like guidance in something specific, that's your time to reach out. They want to hear that. Reach out via the communities, and then I'll give you some contacts also in a moment. Okay, I get the question, what is NASP doing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic? And what I'd like to say is it really depends on what you are doing. Again, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are all NASP and we are all doing this together. These are some things that the NASP leadership and that I as a delegate would compel you to think about so that you can know what NASP is doing, because it's things that you can be doing to support our profession and therefore support kids and families and communities and schools at this time. So the first one is, of course, is just keep yourself familiarized with the recommendations. And I would say, there's so much to do, and I get it, but if you can yourself read what the CDC is saying, what the United States Department of Education, look to the guidance that the State Department is putting out and read it yourself, that's going to help you come up with questions, comments, and potential revisions or concerns with some of those things. So look to them for guidance, read it yourself, and they're going to be doing the best they can, but they're also going to be responsive to what you have to say. Well, maybe not the CDC, but other bodies will be responsive to what you have to say. Be familiar with the resources I shared with you. Make sure that you're keeping up with your communications from NASP, but also from OSPA. I didn't talk about it in detail, but you should know that OSPA leaders are also working very hard to provide you the information that you need via these modules and other avenues. So keep in touch with your professional organizations. And allied professional organizations. I know the Council for Exceptional Children is offering free membership right now. So stay in touch with those, or with CASE. If you are a part of the odds group, or if you get the emails, or you can get on the listserv, do that. Most of these places are looking for partners. We're all engaging in creative problem solving because nobody has the answers. And so, if you're not, we like to say, if you're not at the table, you'll be on the menu. So make sure that you're advocating for yourself and for school psychology as you engage with these professional groups and organizations. Other things that you can do is, if you do have concerns or questions, something that you need addressed, someplace that you need support, appropriately contact the State Department of Education. Be talking to your directors, be talking to your superintendents. Take these guidance documents, highlight the important parts, and show it to them. Send it to them in an email. One thing I would caution, is just to make sure that you're going through appropriately. I know the special education department at the Department of Education is swamped right now. So they may have a format, rather than just calling, that they would like for you to follow. So I would encourage you to do that. In addition to offering your concerns, I would also say offer potential solutions to your concerns as well. So don't just come with a complaint, come with an idea, come with a solution, come with something problem solving to help support their efforts. Stay engaged with your state legislator, governor, and other key policymakers. A lot of new policy, a lot of new rules, a lot of things we've done forever will be turned on its head. So just be sure that you're engaged in conversations so that those in those positions can be supporting your position when they go to vote. And then, of course, utilize your NASP resources, and that would include me as your delegate and others that I'm going to point to in a moment, so that you know who to contact should you have questions, concerns, or need support. And here we are. So again, as the delegate, you can contact me. I'm also an OSPA board member. I also happen to be employed at the State Department of Education as the crisis team school psychologist. So if in any way I can be of support to you and to your district, or to your caregivers in your communities, please contact me. Any email you have for me is fine. And if you don't have one, ericasolinger@gmail.com would be great. So please reach out to me. The OSPA board is also here to support you. okschoolpsych@gmail.com. They'll take your comments, your questions, your needs, and they're working tirelessly to help provide for you. Under the NASP Contact Us page, let's go back here. If you are at the home page for NASP and you scroll down towards the bottom, like many other web pages, they do have a Contact Us option. It will pull up a lot of names and a lot of positions. So if you see something from somebody specifically, you can find out how to get in touch with them. But if you feel overwhelmed and like, I don't know which of these individuals I should be talking to, that would be an appropriate time to email me, and I can direct you to where you should be. And as I'm getting the spinning circle, here we go. My apologies. When I was practicing, of course, it all came up much quicker. But as you can see, here's the Contact Us part. So you can see, everyone from the executive director. That's a hyperlink. It will pull up Kathy. She goes by Kathy. It'll pull up Kathy's email. If you really did, have a concern with the web, you can see that here, as well as some of the departments. But otherwise, if this feels overwhelming and you don't know who to contact, you can ask me. The two names I did provide on the PowerPoint are Kathy Cowan, who is the Director of Communication, and she is taking all manner of questions and concerns and needs for support right now, as well as Kelly Valancourt-Sturbach, and she is also taking questions related to policy and to advocacy. and directing those emails. So that would be a good place to go. And as I close out today, and with the support I have given, I just wanted to say that the best resource that you have is yourself. And I just want you to be critically aware that you are your own most vital resource, you and your health. So please take some time to recognize that at this moment and during this time, no one has the answers. No one knows what is going to happen or where we will be. All of us are experiencing unprecedented change. So please take some time to be aware of your own reactions. I want you to engage in self-care. Please take care of your physical needs, your mental needs, your spiritual needs, and also your educational needs. I was hoping to provide partially to your educational needs by showing you some ways that you can access your own need for knowledge and your own need for guidance and support. And of course, take care of your social needs. And those look different than they ever have before, but be sure that you're finding time to take care of yourself socially, even if it is a happy hour over Zoom. So I would ask you to do that. NASP would ask you to do that because it's important. Choose your own mantra. Some people will say you can't serve from a cup that is empty. Some will say put on your own oxygen mask before you can help others. I like this graphic of, you've got to give yourself nourishment to be your best for others. In any case, just know that your self-care is paramount to being the very best that you can be for others. I also want you to care for each other. Now is a time where we really need to rally around each other. We're all uncertain. We all need help. So check in, stay connected, be present for one another, and know that you have professional and personal networks who are around you and here to support you, and you shouldn't feel alone. So in other words, follow your own awesome advice, not just the things that you're handing out to others, but read it and apply it to yourself. And of course, if you need help, reach out to me, reach out to NASP, reach out to OSPA. We're here to provide help and support. So that is the end of my time. So I would just like for you to know that I sincerely care about each of you. I'm very thankful for your contributions and for your service as school psychologists and as educational professionals and as support and friends to me. So Godspeed in this time ahead. Be safe, be healthy, be well.